All right. Well, as Han mentioned, we recently upgraded back in mid-April, so I'm just going to go over some highlights and some information about our upgrade process. Just a little bit about us, Penn State Hershey Medical Center. We're an academic medical center with about 8,000 employees, and we pretty much run the full suite of Lawson applications using add-ins, Design Studio, process automation, and several custom solutions. Some slight modifications to existing programs, but a lot of custom-built programs. My role at Penn State Hershey is the system administrator, so I'm very much responsible for the system patches, upgrades, and keeping things up and running. One thing that's not on this list that we also utilize is LBI. So this is the road to 10, where we started March 2012 and where we ended up just a few weeks ago. You can see here just the various pieces and the versions and where we started at and the steps all along the way. So how we got there, this is a screenshot of my whiteboard and what it has looked like for the past 2 years. So 2 years ago, I sat in a user group meeting and they said, okay, here's 10 and here's all the versions that you need to be on before you can upgrade to 10. So these were all of the projects that I had to do along the way for the past 2 years, basically. And we have 3 environments. We have 2 testing environments and one production environment. So just kind of all along the way, my manager and I, we sat down and spec'd all these out. So, you know, the big thing is, you know, we took it very piecemeal, piece by piece by piece, and, you know, so we split out upgraded pieces that we could. So, for example, going to LBI version 10, and from process flow to process automation, and introducing the DSP, the distributed security package, in there as well. We had 2 environment upgrades in there mixed along the way, as well as some of the base technology like Oracle and the AIX operating system, and COBOL and our LDAP server. So you can see in the bottom right corner there, we made the date 4/12, and that was just a couple weeks ahead of our goal. So the upgrade path that we chose to do a parallel upgrade. So we installed the 10 environment alongside our existing 9 environment on the same server, and basically went through a migration process. So basically built that system, built that environment from the ground up. I need to mention that I had AVAP, third-party consultant. They were helping us. Basically, I kind of had them in my back pocket and to pull from whenever I ran into issues and needed some assistance. So just real quick, high level, I mean, so we did the parallel upgrade, so installing all the third-party products and making sure. So I had to create a new LDAP instance, and we had WebSphere, but I had to up the FixPack level, so took advantage of that. And then, of course, just create the database and the core tech, installing Mingle for Lawson, which otherwise known as Portal, and then, of course, Mingle Foundation. Do the LDAP bind for authentication, and then do the authentication piece. So we chose to use the Lawson Security Token Service as opposed to Kerberos, because there was no need for us to do that. And then throwing the actual applications in there, including EDI, Employee Self-Service, Requisition Center, BSI. I think that's it. And then you install the upgrade programs. The nice thing about this upgrade is that the upgrade programs do not touch your source environment. So previous upgrades, you installed some upgrade programs in your source and in your target. For this 10X upgrade, they go solely in your target environment. So your source product line, current production, never gets touched. And then you run through some environment migration steps to copy over gen data and LDAP data and all that stuff. And then I basically had to pull in Lawson Business Intelligence, the single sign-on, from the 9 environment that it was pointing to, and point it over to 10, and then do the same thing for Landmark Federation from our existing 9 environment. Like I said, we had done Landmark prior to, and the only thing we used Landmark for was process automation. So we had migrated from process flow to process automation while we were still on 9.01. So then I had to refederate that Landmark environment with our new 10 environment. So just a real high-level timeline of what we did. Started the install and the validation of the install in December of 2013. Total time took me about 2 weeks, but I was doing that alongside my normal day-to-day operations and maintenance of our current production system. So I think total solid was probably about somewhere around 40 hours. And if you're dedicated, the install can be done in about a week. Then from December through February, we basically just did, our end users were in doing exploratory testing and some basic interface testing. This is where users were getting in. They were starting to figure out how Mingle worked and uncovering some of the bugs and determining what patches we were going to need to the applications. We uncovered some issues with the Mingle interface itself that we needed to work through. And I have to give hats off to the development team because they were releasing patches, it seemed like a couple a week, and so I was constantly applying patches through this period to the environment itself. That was fixing a lot of the issues that we were seeing. And then when February through March, we had to get serious and do our integrated testing across all product suites, just really, do hardcore everything, testing it, making sure all the bells and whistles were all working together, all of our interfaces and everything along that line as well. Then continuing on, March and April, just continued integrated testing, and then we do, anytime we do an upgrade, we always run a parallel payroll. So we basically run payroll side by side. We copy the database down at a certain point and payroll side to side, make sure the numbers tie out. And then April 12th was our go live. Just touch briefly on some of the issues that we encountered as we were going along. So this is the main Mingle site, of course. And we had rebranded several years ago. When we released LBI, we had rebranded our web presence as the Pulse. So as you see logos throughout, that's what that is. Mingle 11.5 or 05 or something, I forget which version it is, does allow you to put a wider logo out there. So took advantage of that to throw our logo out there. So this is the main homepage. I just put together a quick getting started guide with application icons to kind of point people to where to go. So of course you see the icons across the top, and those are all subsites under the main site, and each one of those can be controlled by an LSF security role if you're using STS, Lawson STS for authentication. So the plugins for LBI and Lawson, our LBI plugin or application is actually the little heart with the pulse line running through it. The globe, of course, is for the Lawson applications, and then there's also a generic plugin where you can throw any web application in. So the third icon, or the fourth icon there, the checklist, that I have linked directly to the Process Automation web in-basket. So just a quick way to get to that rather than going through the Lawson bookmarks. Mingle with LBI, so it fits nicely in. You know, one of the things that was kind of hit up with our users was, okay, what are all these things, icons on the side? So the contextual apps, of course, which don't have much relevance in LBI, so that you can actually create a new page within your site and remove those icons so that you just have the application container. And that's a basic SharePoint function and how to do that. So getting through, and if you don't have SharePoint knowledge in-house, there's there's some training that you can, I'm sure Microsoft offers some training. I was fairly familiar with SharePoint because we've had it in-house for a while doing other things, so that kind of came in handy to be able to do some of this stuff. One of the other things with LBI was, so they've added this black bar across the top where you can switch between My Dashboards and My Reports. If you click on the My Reports icon or link, you get a list of actually all the reports that you actually have access to. So for our deployment of LBI, we have everything built off of dashboards. So when we put it into Mingle, now this My Reports link is available, and then anything that they might have access to. So you really have to review security of all your reports within LBI. We found a few reports that the security was opened up to everyone that it shouldn't have been. So we had to make sure we go through all of our reports basically with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that everything was secured out properly. You know, with LBI, you have to make sure, this actually kind of bit me, you have to make sure you go in and change the system config items. I ended up, when I redeployed the DSSO piece of it, I had changed the service name and forgot about that, but of course your port numbers and anything else that changes have to be updated here. And the same thing with services for just if you have any links within LBI that render some back office forms, just change your URL to point to your new location. I had an issue with the user synchronization within LBI, and because I set up a brand new LDAP, of course, you know, when you set up some of these things, there's the limit of the number of records a query will retrieve, and so that authentication provider where it says 0 users is because it basically paged out the maximum, and that was one of those things that I had changed in my LDAP years and years ago, and when I built it again, just, you know, realized that I had to change that setting again so that I could properly read the LDAP. And then Lawson within Mingle itself, it's fairly, you know, we've heard all along that there's really not much of a learning curve, and there really truly isn't. There's a lot that's the same: the managed subscriptions, the user options, search box, you know, those are all there. Of course, the big difference is that there's no left nav, you know, and there's with the version that we initially went with, there was no place. If you remember in 9.0, well, in earlier versions of Portal, you could add a welcome message and display the product line. Since we went live, there was a patch that was released now that you can display that product line information. I believe it shows it with the title of the form itself. But so there's patches available for that now. But then, of course, the bookmarks are very different. You know, previously you had them always displayed and they were on the left-hand side, and you could have them opened, expanded, or collapsed. And now it's kind of a fly-out menu as you go through, and you kind of have to navigate through. So it's a little getting used to. It's not quite the same because you don't just see it there all the time. But it does, you know, as part of the migration steps, all of our bookmarks and those types of things came over, so it wasn't a huge issue for the users. With favorites, where you would be able to set up your own favorites, shortcuts to certain forms. We had a note, if you use it and you use the option down below that says open in a new window, what it does is it works, and actually there was a couple patches that we had discovered that we had cases open that had to have issues fixed, because basically when that happens is when you have a favorite set up to open in a new window, it's leaving the Mingle framework. So the icons at the top are gone, and you're basically rendering the portal URL at the same time. So we initially had some issues with right-clicking in boxes for drill around and search and things like that where it wasn't working. Since then, there has been some patches released, but I think all support will always say that, you know, you need to always be maintained within the Mingle framework, the SharePoint framework itself. One of the big things with this version is that it also requires the compatibility mode in IE to be turned off. So a large shop like we are, we have some sites, applications that still require that to be turned on. So we're in this mixed bag right now, and it's kind of somewhat of a maintenance nightmare. We actually pushed out through our IE policy to turn off that display intranet sites and compatibility view option, just so that we could force people out there, because certain things just won't work with that turned on. And then we just kind of deal with things on an as-needed basis. We also actually have a Citrix connection, internal Citrix connection that we can use if we need to push people with browsers that aren't supported. So one of our big holdups too then was Design Studio. Like I said, we are very heavily using Design Studio with a lot of scripting and a lot of just custom solutions built off of some Design Studio stuff. This little object, this little list box object actually hung us up, so the underlying HTML object itself changed, and we had to recode a whole slew of forms. It wasn't a major change, but we just had to go through and touch them all, so it was kind of a thing. It took us a little while to figure it out, and I actually pulled from my bucket of hours from AVAP to have one of them research and figure it out, because I didn't have time to do it. So employee self-service, of course, you know, it runs off of the bookmarks on the left-hand nav and current portal. We actually secured out the globe icon. Unless you're a back office user, you do not see that globe icon. So, and part of why we did that was because of the employee self-service thing. We just didn't like the way that the bookmarks displayed themselves. And so what we actually did was took the opportunity to build an employee self-service dashboard within LBI. So here we have everything kind of brought together. We have custom crystal reports intertwined with the employee self-service screens, all right here on one page. You don't necessarily know what you're going to, other than obviously they look different. So you can see here, this was just a custom self-service screen that pops down and just right within LBI. One thing I'll just note, and this is just one application issue, but you know, just test everything. Even things that you wouldn't even think of testing. We had our AP manager going around and doing some drilling around, and noticed that there was 2 payments for the same vendor, and they were both marked issued, but really if you drilled back even further, or at the one level they were both marked as issued, but you drill back even further to find that one actually was voided. But you know, we found that there was a change in the way the setup of certain things worked. So this automatic the payment summarization field here, the way that works now in version 10 was slightly different. So it was through our AP manager for a little bit until we had support figure out what was going on with that. So the actual go live itself, so our actual upgrade weekend, so the copy and load jobs run much faster. And like I mentioned earlier, there's nothing touched on source. You install the programs and you run them from there. Our 900 to 901 upgrade took about 20 hours to do the database reorg and copy jobs. And I think the 8 to 9 upgrade was about the same as far as some of the larger jobs. This one, the copy jobs themselves took less than 4 hours, even with the Oracle Archive log mode turned on. Generated obviously a ton of Oracle logs, but we were flipping through and clearing things out as stuff was going. So it's all set up through a database link, and everything just copies clean from there. So as the copy jobs were running, I was taking care of redeploying the single sign-on component within LBI, redoing the landmark federation of a production environment to point that. And then I have to give hats off to my end users, because they came in, they got a call at 1 a.m. When the jobs were actually done, and I was done with everything else, for them to go in and do validation. So by the time it was all said and done, we shut down the system Friday at 5 p.m. and we were back up and running full at 4 a.m. Saturday morning. So just about 11 hours for the whole thing. As far as cleanup, yeah, there was things we missed. We have a ton of scripts, we have a ton of scheduled jobs, and we have a ton of interfaces. And there was a few things here and there, but overall, things went very well. And we touched on a lot. I mean, we hit a lot of things within the first week. After that, and like I said, they were mostly minor things, nothing major. A higher level of calls from users not knowing where to go or where to find things anymore. But since then, it has definitely quieted down, and things have kind of flushed out. So I know I kind of rushed through that, but were there any questions?